Yes, sir. You can start.
I'll share my screen. And please let me know if the screen is visible.
Yeah, it is visible.
Yeah. Okay, shall I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the topic that I've selected for discussion today, a presentation followed by discussion, is ethics and its evolution and the objective viewpoint on that. So let's see what we have here. I'll begin by telling you a short story. I'll begin not from science, but I'll begin with something else. This is from Khalil Gibran's book, The Madman. Once there were two hermits and who lived on a lonely mountain. They loved each other and they loved God. So the story goes, one day, an evil spirit entered the heart of the older hermit and he decided to part ways. He said to the younger hermit, it's time that we go different ways. So please bring all the possessions we have to divide them. Now, the only possession they had between them was this earthen bowl. The younger hermit, who was still the old person, was very sad that they have to part ways. But he said, brother, if that is your wish, let us go ahead. However, how can we divide this earthen bowl? If we divide it, it's of no use to you and me. So please keep this earthen bowl. The older hermit was extremely angry. He said, I will not accept any charity. I want justice. The bowl has to be divided. Then the younger hermit came up with another plan, another proposal saying, let's cast a lot and then decide who gets it. He said, no, I will not trust justice to vain chance. The bowl has to be divided. I want justice and mine own. Finally, the younger hermit, very sad, he agreed, okay, brother, let us divide the bowl. This time, the face of this older hermit grew exceedingly dark. He said, you cursed coward, you refuse to fight. So what this story reflects is this highly selfish, egoistic personality, which manifests everywhere. All of us have it to some extent, or it shows up at different instances. And I'm using this story to define what is ethics. Ethics is the continuous struggle against this selfish ego. H.G. Wells has written about this in his book, Outlines of History, that if you make a person, man or woman, sufficiently angry, sufficiently jealous, drunken, then the red-hot eyes of cavemen start glaring out to you. And that we as humans are barely shambling towards light. There may be a lot of good things, but the usual behavior that you see around you is something of that kind where people are so obsessed with their own self. So that brings us as to what is ethics. And this is the definition I will follow throughout the remaining part of my talk. Ethics is an inner discord against our primitive egoistic self. And it is an allowance for others. The degree of allowance can vary. It can be a small allowance, or it can be a complete altruistic behavior. It varies from individual to individual, or for the same individual, it varies from time to time or depending on the context. But broadly, this is what can be considered as ethics. And it is a part of an evolutionary process, yet incomplete in man, which is taking man from primitive egoistic being to a social animal. So the views that I'm expressing, I have to acknowledge, are due to Schrödinger, who wrote a very short article about 90 years ago, where he has tried to define what are ethics from an objective viewpoint. Typically, the viewpoint for ethics is that it's for the propagation of a moral code. various religious texts provide this is the ethics, and God has made ethics. The job of human beings is to propagate that moral code. I have nothing against or for that argument, because once you say it is due to God, there is not much discussion possible. Either you believe it or you don't believe it. And across different religions, the ethical code also varies. So I'll not consider this viewpoint at all because it can't be debated. Maybe it can be experienced. On the other hand, the viewpoint proposed by Schrödinger, where ethics originates from the evolutionary transition of humans from solitary egoistic beings to social animals. That is the definition with which I'll go ahead. And if you pay attention, ethical behavior is a self-conquering exercise. The basic tendency of the self is to work towards your own benefit, like survival of the fittest, might is right. It goes against that. It allows some allowance for other people. It helps to establish a harmonious society. I have said that in the title of my talk, ethics and evolution of ethics. And you might wonder what has ethics to do with evolution, because ethics is something experienced within the short lifespan of one individual, whereas evolution is a very gradual process that happens over billions of years. How can they two be connected? Ethical practices of one person do not go to your next generation necessarily. The next generation may be completely different. In order to appreciate the connection between ethics and evolution, it is important to see what is consciousness. With that, we'll come to the connection between ethics and evolution. Consciousness reflects, I can give an example. Imagine you are driving a car and you have various thoughts in your mind. You're thinking about your work or your family. And if you're driving on a familiar route, the car would maneuver through the roads and reach the right destination without your having realized it. The point I'm trying to express here is that there are various levels of consciousness. The highest level is the one which is occupying your thoughts all the time. At a lower level, somehow your car got maneuvered. At the end, you realized, I have reached there. Something was maneuvering the car that is lower down on the ladder of consciousness. And then there are things which are even lower down, such as your heartbeat, your pulse, your breathing. You barely notice those things. So what lies in the zone of evolution is consciousness. And I'll try to express that by sharing this example. It has been said, it is well known actually, that not all human beings, adults, can digest milk. Children, of course, can. But when you look at adults, certain populations can digest milk, certain populations cannot digest. It is believed that few thousand years ago, a mutation happened, a gene mutation, which allowed human beings to digest milk. Such a mutation alone cannot help unless there is an associated thought process. The thought process is that hunter-gatherers should start domesticating cattle, and then they can extract milk, they can drink milk, they can realize that they can shift to a completely different society. They have to have a lot of new thoughts, completely new habits. And that is to say that the gene mutation alone is not enough. It has to be accompanied by a thought process. The thought process and gene mutation together take the evolutionary process forward. And I'm sure this would not have been a linear process. There may have been many different thoughts. I just imagined one other situation. Maybe this kind of thing happened. They tried to milk mammoths, and maybe the results were not good. So finally, things worked out well with cattle, and therefore we drink the milk of cattle. This is one example, and there are many others. The evolution of flight in birds. It is believed that feathers only served as thermal insulators to begin with. And there are various hypotheses on how birds learn to fly. We are not sure of that, but it is true that at the moment when they were learning how to fly, that is billions of years ago, that would have formed a core part of their consciousness. They would be aware of the issues with regard to loss of balance, as they are taking bigger strides by gliding. Initially, they glided, then they started to fly. So again, the thought process and evolution have to go hand in hand. With that, you can appreciate that ethical dilemmas occupy a major part of human consciousness. We are struggling with them all the time. We have this notion of what is right and wrong, and continuously we are making decisions. So ethics occupies an important part of our consciousness, and various arguments have shown that consciousness lies in the zone of evolution. So this is the Venn diagram showing the relationship between ethics, consciousness, and evolution. And we should not forget this definition as we go along, because I will use it again and again. Ethics is the inner discord against our primitive ego. It will be very helpful to compare what happens in the human society with what happens in the society of other animals, animals which are social beings. And these are animals like bees, wasps, ants, and so on. Bees have a certain harmony. Look at a beehive, everything follows an order. The individual bees, and almost all of them are worker bees, except there is one queen. Sometimes there may be more, but usually there is one queen. It's the queen that lays the eggs, and the bees, the other worker bees, do all the other hard jobs. They get the pollen, they rear the eggs, they rear the larvae, and then they make this hive. They are working very altruistically. Not one of them deviates from that duty. The worker bees don't lay eggs. Instead, they rear the eggs which are laid by the queen bee. And further, if at all any worker bee happens to lay an egg, then the other worker bees, and which is a very rare event, the other worker bees ensure that those eggs are destroyed. We might feel sad for these bees, the worker bees, that if they, actually I should tell you that the worker bees have an opportunity to become queen bee. So there is no real difference. Every bee can become queen bee, but because the worker bees starve the larvae and ensure that every time there is only one bee at place. We do not need more than one bee. So because of the less food that they get, they turn into worker bees. We might feel sad for them, but I would like to show you that one should not feel sad. There have been studies recently from the University of Lausanne in Switzerland, which looked at social isolation in ants. An ant which has been kept with adequate amount of food in a different environment, what this ant does is there's no shortage of food. It can just go around, collect food, but its lifetime was found to be only 6.5 days, which is less than 10% of the average lifespan of a normal ant. Why is the lifespan so short? Why did this ant, despite having a lot of food, not survive as an individual? That's the basic tendency of this social animal. If either they kept walking in search of a relative with whom they can break their bread with, or the scientific explanation is the following: ants regurgitate their food, and then it requires the fluids of many different ants. They should consume the same food so that the digestion can happen properly. So we should not feel sad that they are being made to do this work. And though they have the opportunity to become a queen ant or a queen bee, that they don't become, because nature has ensured they can't survive otherwise. It might appear this represents a very harmonious situation. The bees, they are rearing their brothers and sisters, not their own offsprings, because all of the other workers are born from the same queen. And it's a harmonious society. Maybe this is an ideal, but you have the following problems. You have wars between bees, and I'll show you an example. If a bee moves from one hive by mistake to a wrong hive, maybe there is a breeze blowing in that direction or a shortage of pollen. Then there are guard bees standing at the hive who ask, who goes there? Show your identity papers. And these are like pheromones. And if those identity papers are not shown, then the result is death. The stray bees are immediately killed by the guard bees. Look at how it works within the same hive. There is so much of harmony. The moment they leave the hive and go to another hive, the ethics are completely different. Because there is no inner discord, as what we can infer, though we cannot really go into the mind of the bee. But what we can infer from their behavior, all the bees behave in the same way. If you're responding to a bee of the same hive, you are very kind. If you're responding to an outside bee, this is the result. That's what we can look at and comment. Wars of the bees have been going on for billions of years because the evolution of bees stopped long ago. It's not that it's a recent product. Maybe they made 1 billion years ago. And over this billion years, they've been fighting. Within each hive, there is harmony, but between two hives, there have been wars. And it's not just one individual straying bee which gets killed. There is an Australian species of bee which fights wars for months. Bees from one hive invade another hive. They destroy to the extent possible. They kill the queen and then they install their own queen. These are processes which have never stopped. Now, the only other society with which I'll try to compare the human society is that of chimpanzees, and I hope I don't have to give much motivation. They are the closest to human beings in the evolutionary link. As you can see here, the branch which takes to chimpanzees, and the next is human beings. And their lifespan, their life cycle is very similar. They undergo phases like childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. They can make tools. For instance, what the chimpanzee pictured here is the first ever picture of a chimpanzee using tools. And apart from human beings, they are one of the very few species which can make tools. They have very close bonding between their siblings and mother and son and daughter. They're very closely bonded, just like in human beings. And a lot of work was done for almost like 5-6 decades by Jane Goodall, who worked at the Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania. She looked at the genealogy of Gombe Stream chimps, starting from 1940s, 50s to this day. Individual chimps were identified and their behavior was looked at, how one chimp behaves with respect to their own siblings, their mother, and other members of the tribe. And with so much decades of study, what they could find is instances of extreme emotional bonding. One example I'm showing here, taken from this National Geographic article by Jane Goodall in 1979. Upon the death of the mother, this chimpanzee, the young one, lost interest in life. And it came to the same spot. It stopped eating food and died in a few weeks' time. That is the extreme emotional bonding they have. And here what is pictured is the sibling which is trying to revive. Hey, please don't die. We can be together. This is the sister. But then not all chimps are good, just like in the society of humans. So what you have in this picture shown is a border patrol party. Again, very similar to bees. Now, their job is to look for intruders. They walk along the border, and chimpanzee borders are very small. The territory they live in is a few square miles, and the individuals are about a dozen of them. The moment the number increases, they again split up. And the rogue chimpanzees are the ones which form the border patrol party. What they could document was very alarming. What Jane Goodall found is that these border patrol parties indulged in systematic murder, cannibalism, and extermination of another community for the purpose of territorial expansion. Here, you can see picturized the Kasakela chimpanzees invaded, and it's very systematic. They would isolate one of the chimpanzees of the other tribe, and when the chimpanzee is isolated, they would collectively attack and kill and even feed on the body. And once all the male members had been killed, then the territory got expanded. Many of these things are remind us of the dark side of human nature, because these things we also see around us. The scale is different. This is on a very small scale, and it tells us how these things have actually evolved. So then the behavior in chimpanzees, unlike the behavior in bees, is highly individualistic. There are good chimps and bad chimps, and what is pictured here is again an example of extreme emotional bonding. This chimpanzee was attacked. It's about to die. There are festering wounds, and another chimpanzee is trying to drive away flies and make the last moments more comfortable. So then how do we stand as human beings? Look at the society of humans. Are we like bees? And is it good to be like bees? To be or not to be is the question. If you observe the human society, certain aspects are like bees. We also form units. Those units could be our community, or more often, the more important unit is, of course, the nation. Within that, there is some kind of harmony. But beyond that, there are wars. And the dangers for human beings are many-fold more, because the wars between bees involve killing, certainly. The wars between humans today can involve nuclear weapons, and there can be a catastrophe. There are predictions that maybe humanity may not survive. These are very important questions, and therefore looking at what happens in the society of animals can tell us a lot. One distinction between human society and animal society is the partial egoism in humans. Human beings have not completely given up their ego. We have a selfish ego, as I demonstrated with the story right in the beginning. Bees have given up their ego long ago. No two bees are different. They all behave alike. They like each other. There is no thought process. There is no inner discord. There is no ethics. They have a certain fixed way of behaving. Human beings still are afraid of fighting. They are afraid of wars. They think if two nations fight, the fight can come to me someday. If two bee societies are fighting, two hives are fighting, in the meantime, a third hive can prosper. There is more pollen available because the two hives are fighting and they're killing each other. What they don't realize, the war will come to their doorstep sooner or later. And the war has been coming to their doorstep for billions of years. We as human beings realize it's not the same case. If two nations are fighting, I can stand aloof for some time, but sooner or later, the war will come to my doorstep. And we are therefore concerned about this. We look for harmony in the larger society, as the entire humankind should live at some kind of a harmonious existence. One cannot be aloof and have harmonious existence only for a single community, a single nation. Ethics and inner discord, and these were the key things that I stressed upon. Let's see how they show up in the human society. I just have one slide because most of my discussion is focused on the scientific aspect. But you look across different religious texts or literature, inner discord is the key. Whether you look at the story of Digavu, which is a Buddhist tale, or the story of Mahatma Gandhi expressed in My Experiments with Truth, Bhagavad Gita, the inner discord of Arjun, Hamlet also had extreme inner discord. These four very different examples taken from different cultures. Look at the common point. Where there is inner discord, ethics naturally comes. Now, what is the right ethics is difficult to answer, because ethics is in the process of evolution in mankind. We cannot say this is the right ethical behavior. One can argue for or against many of these things. But then the thing I want to caution about is ethics and institutions. In the society of bees, there is an institution. There are no ethical considerations because the bees do not think. They all act in the same way. Similarly, in human societies, institutions tend to remove the process of inner discord. The institution can be a religious institution, can be a national institution. It removes the inner discord by not requiring the individual to think. You are required to follow certain instructions in the interest of that institution. As a result, a lot of contradictory behavior happens, as pictorially depicted here. If there is no inner discord and there is merely an ethical code, then you may have situations where people behave in ways lightly depicted as shown here. For instance, I can share some personal example. Like, I know people who are very careful about not harming animals, not even harming an ant. But then when thousands of people die in a war, they say, okay, this is some kind of a geopolitical necessity that this should be happening. Now, how can a person be saying this and that? Then you realize that the original non-violence was only a ritual. It is not born out of inner discord. So one has to be wary of ethical code versus inner discord. The ethical code itself is very important. The ethical code is the seed for inner discord. So many important texts are there. When you read them, you realize, and then you think about them. But the thought process and contemplation is extremely important. If merely a ritual is done, then there are contradictions. Again, I'll just conclude by giving one more example. And I started with Khalil Gibran. I'll also conclude with Khalil Gibran. And this is about inner discord and ethics, the close relationship between the two. So Khalil Gibran writes in The Prophet, who can spread his hours before him, saying, this for God, this for myself, this for my soul, this other for my body. All your hours are wings that beat through space from self to self. He who wears his morality but has his best garment were better naked. The wind and the sun will tear no holes in his skin. And he who defines his conduct by ethics, very important, he who defines his conduct by ethics imprisons his songbird in a cage. The freest song comes not through bars and wires. And he to whom worshipping is a window to open but also to shut has not yet visited the house of his soul, whose windows are open from dawn to dawn. If you define your conduct by ethics, meaning by an ethical code, that is not the highest level of ethics, because the highest level of ethics comes from the inner discord. It needs deep contemplation to arrive at what is correct behavior in any situation. So with that, I just conclude and thank you for your attention. I welcome any questions.
An excellent presentation, Dr. Manu. Any questions for Dr. Manu?
Can you please stop sharing so that we can?
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Manu. It was a wonderful.
Thank you very much, sir.
Wonderful session. So just a couple of thought processes. I won't say
Yes,
questions.
yes. Right.
So there are two extreme viewpoints. One is Charles Dawkins. It's called selfish gene, which drives all the behavior of all living beings
Right.
for survival. To what we call as enlightenment liberation, where there's no self at all. Okay, freedom.
Right.
The ethics
Absolutely.
and evolution falls between these two boundaries.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Total selfishness and total selflessness.
Yes, yes.
Right. So in between this whole range of spectrum of what we call as ethics and morality, all those fall in between. And you gave a very nice example of bees. You give a nice example of monkeys and human beings also. So overall, is evolution. So you give ethics, evolution, and consciousness relationship.
Right.
Basically, the consciousness is towards evolution.
Yes.
So this entire process of nature, what we said is survival of the fittest. Is it driving us towards a more and more holistic life, which is actually selflessness?
Like this, what is happening in the human society is that we are in the zone of evolution. The evolution is not yet complete. Therefore, you get this variety of behavior with different kind of ethics and even absence of ethics. In most individuals, ethics is very rare. Mostly what is dominating is a very selfish, egoistic personality. But then there are tendencies towards ethics, but that gives us a lot of hope because we are in this evolutionary transition. Maybe once the transition is complete, entire humanity might be living as one in a very kind of harmonious existence. I feel we can only speculate, but that looks like one of the possibilities which gives us hope.
So is evolution towards the survival of the fittest or survival the one with the total selflessness?
So survival of the fittest can happen for a solitary individual, and it can happen for bees. Bees are highly successful if you see. They evolved long ago and they haven't gone extinct. They stopped evolving and then they have been the same, even though the environment has been changing. But there is no one rule or one explanation for the survival process. But when it comes to a social animal, then the survival is important. For survival, it is important to have ethics in the human society. If there is no ethics, we are heading towards maybe a nuclear catastrophe, which might end the whole society. So no one individual can maximize their own benefits. We realize that if there are wars happening elsewhere, it can come to us. When this realization has gone to everybody, then maybe we will have a harmonious society as part of the evolution.
Wonderful, sir. So actually, we are developing systems and processes or towards that. Internet, now it's artificial intelligence, sharing of knowledge. It's all actually mostly integrating the whole.
Yes.
Even though we have a selfishness as individuals, collective working is becoming more and more interconnected.
Very interesting. This collectiveness is increasing. There is more communication, but all kinds of thoughts are getting communicated. Love is getting communicated. Hatred is getting communicated. So I would not say communication alone is enough, but communicating the right and good ideas is what is going to take us to a harmonious society.
Wonderful, sir.
Thank you.
To say that ethics in our culture, Indian culture, we call it dharma.
Yes.
So basically, dharma is not a set of codified ethics. Not a codified. It's actually dynamic. I think the dharma concept integrates the inner conflict, what you're speaking of, and ethical behavior. It's actually it's one seamless whole.
Yes, absolutely. I think in Bhagavad Gita, the Swadharma has been highlighted. But important thing is, if anybody reads the Gita, it's not just something to read and follow, but one has to contemplate, because Arjun went through that process. Why it should be simpler for us? He went through a long process of what is right and wrong and then made a choice. The choice we make may be different. The inner discord is the important thing. Contemplation and inner discord are key to ethical behavior.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I have a question, Dr. Manu. What is actually evolving? See, we say evolution. And obviously there is consciousness. As you have said, consciousness is something which is in the domain of evolution, and ethics is in the domain of consciousness.
Right.
So if you see these processes together, what really is evolving? Can we say it's only the form and the species that are evolving, or anything underlying more important concept is really evolving?
So from the scientific perspective, only the material body's evolution is being discussed. There are various theories. There are even mathematical models known as mechanistic dynamics of evolution, where individuals are like elementary particles, and then they are all of one type, and then adaptive diversification happens through a process of birth, death, inheritance, and mutation. These are the 4 ingredients which lead to adaptive diversification. None of these texts touch upon the mind. It's outside the, I can say, realm of physics or biology. However, Schrödinger has tried to make a connection. There are not many. So I thought this connection should be a topic on which I can discuss. There are not many such talks or literature available. It's not that alone the body alone is evolving, but the self or the soul is also evolving. We do not understand it in mathematical terms. In religious terms, there are a lot of explanations, but then you have to make a choice. You do not know. You may come from a certain cultural or religious background. You might say this is right and that is right. So staying away from those possibilities, an objective view is that consciousness is in the zone of evolution. It's still trying to work towards the benefit of the self. Only thing is how you realize that benefit. As an individual, I realize a benefit, or in a society, I realize my benefit. At the end, the individual is benefiting even from the society. With that understanding, this thing is progressive. But very interesting. Thank you for the very interesting remark.
Dr. Manu, I don't know whether you're familiar with the morphological field, what Sheldrake says. Rupert Sheldrake.
Yes.
A morphological field where species of a common characteristic share the information and knowledge and evolve, or which helps in their evolution. Are you familiar?
I'm a little bit familiar with the Rupert Sheldrake's work, but maybe you could elaborate for the benefit of all, so that we could know exactly what was the key point you're referring to.
Yeah, Rupert Sheldrake brought out a very nice theory. I don't know how widely it's accepted in scientific circles. What he said is that the species of, let's say, dogs or rats, they share a common morphological field, which is not physical. There's an information exchange happens in that morphological field. For example, he gave a maze problem for rats kept in a certain place, solving a maze. And he kept rewards for that solving the maze. Now, what he found is that the rats in other places, which are geographically separate, they started learning the tricks of the rats which are isolated from them. So that means there is some sort of information exchange which is happening beyond the physical domain.
I got it. Yes. So very beautiful, very interesting idea. Yes.
In that sense, the bees work like a collective mind. The bees are, many bees are there. They work like a collective mind. It's like a single collective mind working as a bee. Similarly, species also, there seems to be a concept of a collective consciousness or collective sharing of information which happens, whether it's rats, human beings, or dogs, everywhere that's happening. That's what probably Sheldrake was trying to communicate.
Okay, so I'll share some thoughts which come to me after you gave this very interesting and detailed description. There may be no known mechanism as far as science today is concerned as to how one isolated colony of rat and their evolution can transmit to another rat. But except if we allow for one possibility, and that is the entire consciousness of all beings is one.
Yeah.
That is a possibility from a logical perspective, because we say there is an external world and then there is us. So there is a world outside and a world reflected in our mind. But actually there is only one world, and that is the world reflected in our mind. The other world is an inference.
Yes.
Because we all agree on this. So the consciousness may be appearing different, or this multitude of consciousness is only an apparent fact. In reality, there can be a single consciousness.
Yes.
That is a possibility, but there is no like hard evidence. There are these few experiments and possibilities. And if you think of humans, we have more bacterial and viral cells than human cells. You count the number.
Yes.
So
colony of cells.
Yeah. And how much of bacteria is doing the thinking as I'm talking, I don't know. Right? It is said that the bacterial cells play a role in the neural networks also.
Correct.
Some of the messages going across are passing through them.
Yes.
And we are an ecosystem. We are not an individual from that perspective.
we are a colony of cells.
But no one no human being or anybody has ever experienced two consciousnesses. Everybody experiences only one consciousness. At a time. I mean, there may be split personality, but at a time, everybody has this one consciousness. Even in a dream, you
Yes.
are one and then there are others.
Yes.
So what it means is that there may be fundamentally only one consciousness, which is just branching out. And when we do meditation, we focus on one thing, we don't see rest of the world. So similarly, we might be in a subconscious state where we are seeing this division. We see our body, we don't see others as being same as us. So this kind of a situation may be at a subconscious level. We can't realize that we are the same, but we are more focused on our own body, not in a positive meditative sense, but I'm just giving an analogy. What happens in meditation, you focus at something, you lose sight of the other thing. Here, subconsciously, we are focused on our own self, and we have lost sight that all of us are the same one.
Wonderful, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So basically, the consciousness, what so-called enlightened beings they are speaking of, is a unitary consciousness, so non-dual consciousness, one consciousness.
Yes.
Right?
Very much Vedantic philosophy.
Vedantic philosophy, one consciousness.
Yes.
And in between, there's another extreme also, one consciousness where there's nothing, and other extreme is one consciousness which is everything, which is actually cosmic consciousness.
Right. Huh.
So in between, we are somewhere.
We do not know. I mean, this is something which goes into then the realm of experience, because
Yes.
science cannot take us to all answers within this lifetime, surely. It can give us some clues. So I feel science has an important role, but it doesn't give all the answers to such questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank you for the nice
point.
questions.
Anybody else has any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Manu sir, so you said ethics. So ethics shouldn't be taken like a blind code of conduct. Instead, it should be resolved by our inner discord,
Yes.
and then we should have our own. We should have our own ethical code. That is our ethical code.
That's the highest ethical code. That's the
highest ethical code.
Right.
Yes. But we know that inner discord is something very highly individualistic. It's going to be different from what I have versus what someone else has.
Mhm.
So an ethical code that I come up would be different from what an ethical
Right.
code someone else comes up. So if this is the case, how can we reconcile the fact that a completely harmonious society would have completely different ethical codes and yet be completely harmonious? This is like let's say a final goal of what the society must be, where it's completely harmonious, but it comes up with all sorts of different ethical codes.
Okay. Very nice question, Pranav. So there are many things which come to my mind. One of them is, if you look at society of bees, first of all, we cannot say there is ethics at work, because in the definition that I have given, I've equated ethics to inner discord. Inner discord should be shown with some individuals having a different behavior, a rebellious behavior or something. Bees behave in the same way, so it is difficult to say there is ethics at work. But if that whatever was there has been taken inside, like through the evolutionary process, they have become, it has gone into the subconscious. They behave all in the same way. But that harmony is dangerous. Suppose we have an ethical code which we have imbibed inside, and we have not yet achieved the universal harmony. We will be good to our community, our nation, but then there will be wars, like the wars of bees, but wars of humans would be more dangerous, to the extent that it can completely obliterate all life on earth, at least all human life on earth. So having that rebellion is important and inner discord is important, because we have not achieved that goal. If the inner discord is gone, there is no evolutionary process still happening. Now you say everyone may come up with different ethical code. That is also fine, because one ethical code cannot solve all situations. You might say in some situation, this non-violence is important, but then you might say call of duty is also important. No, we can't say in the same situation, how can both be correct? An individual make a choice that this is important or that is important. As long as contemplation is happening, I would feel that ethics is at work. And we don't have the same ethics because it's in the zone of evolution. Like you compare with the example of cow, somebody trying to milk a cow, somebody trying to milk a mammoth. Now, this is not that there is a linear process happening. We are making a transformation. We made a transformation from hunter-gatherer to pastoralist kind of society. The process was extremely non-linear. Various ideas came and something worked, and finally that is accepted. This is an ongoing process, and the more discord we have, the more we have hope that there will be harmony.
Okay.
So it looks
So then
a bit
how would you
counterintuitive.
define?
Yeah.
Okay. So then how would you define harmony then?
No, if at all, I mean, in human beings, there is a very hard choice because we have armed ourselves so much. Unless the harmony is the harmony of all human beings, I would not call it harmony.
Okay.
And that is like an extreme final goal. It's not a goal. I think it's a process. It's one of the possibilities. Thinking from a scientific perspective, you might say maybe human beings may not survive or they may survive. So these are only possibilities. We cannot say it's a goal. The moment you say it's a goal, it's a religious viewpoint. I will stop at that and say it's a possibility.
Okay. So then would you define, ideally the society would be to contemplate more and more on this inner discord. So would you describe a harmonious society as a society that contemplates a lot on their inner discord?
Which has a lot of inner discord, but slowly that discord would, once you start establishing harmony, it will be imbibed, it will be inside of us. And the eventual, if such a state is realized, it's only speculation, then we would be like bees, but we would not be divided into hives. There is the Schrödinger made this very interesting comparison. He said that because in human beings, this partial ego is still there. It's actually a virtue. What he meant by this partial ego is that suppose there is a war happening somewhere else in the world. Why is somebody in this nation worried about it or commenting about it and thinking about peace? Because we have started to realize as human beings, and bees don't have that realization. Human beings have the realization that we are part of that one world. And it's not enough to have harmony within your home, within your community or nation. It has to be for the whole world.
Okay. Okay. So can I say harmony is trying to imbibe the whole universe as like feeling that we are part of the whole universe.
Right.
So harmony is, so the goal for everyone to be harmonious is to be inclusive, is to have a feeling of being inclusive to the whole universe. And the way to resolve this and the way to get there is to essentially contemplate more on just one's individual's inner discords.
Right. And this thought has been expressed many times in literature. For example, you look at Buddhist literature, it says because we are part of this one society, presents it like a logical argument why one should have compassion. You may do something wrong, then the other person will wrong you, and the process will go on, and then there will be disharmony. And in the life of Mahatma Gandhi, for instance, he was highly inspired by some nice poems he read by Shamal Bhatt, if I remember correctly. So what that poem says is, return when you get evil, you should return it with good. And the reason is, all life is one. If you continue returning evil with evil, then that is, it'll make the world go blind. And then he practiced it also in his life. There are certain people whose lives are like open stories. One can see how they went through an inner discord. And there are many thought processes he went through. It's not that from birth he had been raising this slogan, but he has done experiments. He has failed. There are so many failures. He has documented his failures. and then arrived at something which was implemented in the satyagrahas, for example.
Okay. Right. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Brenda.
Interestingly, one just observation, sir. Not
Yes, sir.
Manu was the first human being to give the codification of dharma.
Right. Sorry, but I am totally
That's why-
opposed to codification. In general, I'm not saying.
The reason you took this topic, that's what I asked.
No, that is just a coincidence. I was saying that codification is important as a seed for thought, but not the final thing. If you take codification, I'm not referring to Manu's codification. I'm just referring to generally any codification. Codification provides seed of thought. It is result of many saints or rishis or anybody. They have contemplated and given this to us, but should not be accepted on a platter. But one should debate and think what is it.
Wonderful.
I have a question, sir.
Yes, Tushar.
You mentioned about evolution of ethics. Like if we see about evolution in general, like studies have shown that we share 50% of our DNA with bananas.
With bananas?
Yeah.
Did you say bananas? Okay.
Yeah, banana. Yeah, 50% of our DNA resembles like banana, and 99% of our DNA resembles like chimpanzees, as you mentioned. So, what is the distinguishing factor here? Is it like just being aware of ourselves, who we are, that makes a big difference in the way we function as an ethical society, which is way more complex than bees or ants?
But I didn't get your comment completely, Tushar. What were you trying to point at with regard to bananas?
Is it the self-awareness which brings us way more complex as a society in terms of ethics, how we see ethics and how we evolve the way we see ethics? Because as far as the biology is concerned, like even if we consider 99% similarity with chimpanzees, it's just 1% difference biologically. So what is the distinguishing factor?
No, I will say, don't even look at chimpanzees and bananas. Just look at human beings, and you will say this person behaves like a human being, this behaves like a chimpanzee, and this one behaves like a banana. We don't even have to go and see that difference in DNA. With the same DNA, you have all kind of variations. And that reason why we have humans as chimpanzees, the reason is that this ethics is an ongoing process. There are all kind of variety of opinions, variety of thoughts present. We have not reached the stage, and anything which is in the zone of evolution forms the core part of our thought process. Ethical dilemmas are core part of the thought process. To say that DNA is shared between banana and humans, now I cannot enter the consciousness of a banana and tell you anything more. It appears to be a sterile object, but maybe it is not. We can only comment for other things like maybe bees, but they also don't appear to think because they all act in the same way. And chimpanzees, though they have like only a 1% separation, but they are extremely close to humans in many respects. Their emotional bonding or their dark side are both parallels to the human society.
Does it mean that if our ethical values have to be more evolved than what they are, like every individual should strive for being more aware of what their true nature is?
As long as individuals are contemplating, something good can happen, though can't say definitely will happen. But if the contemplation has stopped, that means like the wars of bees happened for billions of years, the wars of humans will also happen for till the end of the human race. Contemplation naturally brings in rebellion or different thoughts going against the standard ethical code, because you believe something which is right is not according to the ethical code, but according to your own inner, you're torn by that. You feel that, just if I blindly apply this, it's not correct. I have to raise the level. And unfortunately, though there are very good saints and human beings who have come up with bright ideas, the evolution process for thoughts is not the same as for bodily characteristic. Bodily characteristic directly go from one, say, parent to the child. But as far as thoughts are concerned, what is evolving is the collective thought of the society. that is moving ahead. That balloon is expanding. That balloon is available to everybody. But the individual's thoughts are not getting transmitted. So you have someone like Buddha or Jesus, and then you wonder what happened to others, why they were not at the same level. Because it's not the individual thought which is going. These are bright sparks. They are inspirations.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So Dr. Manu, one last question.
Yes, sir, please.
We actually, in the context of the consciousness, individual has to, what you call inner discord. It depends on the level of the evolution of the individual. We have a concept that individual itself will evolve over many lifetimes as the self.
Mm-hmm.
That's what is the tradition of Buddhism, Indian,
Right.
many karmic lives. So
Yes.
there's individual evolution itself is taking place at the individual level. Then there's a collective consciousness evolves depending on the level of individuals. And collective consciousness, depending on that society, will codify what is the collective knowledge at that point of time.
Now, about this part, whether individuals have another life, science has nothing to say. Then it is a matter of belief. Some people say you go to heaven. Some people say you have another birth. Some people say you have another human birth, and you may even be born in a different planet. So I cannot comment on that part. But although there is some intuitive feeling, but we have to acknowledge that that is something we are not sure of. But as far as the one consciousness is concerned, if that is true, that automatically makes us deathless, because the consciousness being one. The one consciousness has a certain logical backing to it, because that is based on arguments like the world is reflected only once, and that is, there is no other external world. There is this one world. We all agree because there is one consciousness. So that part I completely agree with, and we are slowly beginning to realize this one consciousness, and in being in harmony with that one consciousness. Whether we have another life is very hard to say.
Okay, thank you. So if anybody else has any questions, otherwise we would like to thank
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. Thank you
for coming for this session and enlightening us with the views on ethics, morality, evolution, consciousness, and in a very with a lot of examples. Thank you very much, sir. It's very
thank you all. Thank you, sir. Thank all of you.
Thanks, Dr. Manu.